Richard, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Yeah, good. It's a nice warm day today in Reading.
It is nice. So, Richard Caldicott, but the business is Caldicott Consulting.
Correct, yes.
What does it do?
So I was previously, up until January, I was a IT director for a very successful recruitment business. Coming towards the end of my career with those guys, I had this sort of like niggle to share some of the successes that I had as an IT director, where I brought the IT world and the recruitment tech world closer together. We always had a lot of success over there, generating good ROI and good training and consistency and good processes across the business. And I thought, I wonder if there's an opportunity to do this for multiple recruitment companies across the UK. And I took a bit of a leap of faith towards the end of last year. Left my job that I was quite happy with. Some great people down there. Left my job down there and started my business to help recruitment companies be better, either with what they've got and enhancing their current sort of technology stack and processes, but also helping them implement and invest in new technology if that's required. And I'm seven months into this journey. It's brilliant.
Fantastic.
I love it.
Yeah.
There's some incredible people out there in our industry, some fantastic business owners that want to do more and need help, if they don't mind me saying. They need help, need a bit of advice and a bit of guidance, and that's ultimately why I set up my business. Thoroughly enjoying this journey.
Brilliant. That's that's really good. I'm really pleased that it's kind of started so well. And I think what's interesting, when we first met earlier in the year, was actually your niche is really quite good especially within recruitment. And if you're a bit stereotypical broad brush for a minute, most recruitment business owners used to be recruiters, and then they start doing it for themselves and they build that business. Very entrepreneurial, very fast paced, very want to grow. Like you said, there's some of the people you're talking to, very ambitious. That's again being slightly stereotypical. But sometimes the systems and the tech gets left behind with that, and having you to be able to understand the market, again thinking about a stereotypical IT department or person, just sort of sitting behind closed doors and doesn't understand the business. You've got a great blend between understanding recruitment and understanding the tech in an industry where people just tend to want to grow, sell, drive the business forward, and systems and processes come after. So I think you're in a good place.
One thing I've always tried to do is not be an IT guy. You said it earlier, that IT typically operates behind closed doors, whereas I've been given the opportunity with the previous employers to have an office. Quite often it's right at the back, behind finance, behind HR.
No lights, close the door.
No lights, beautifully air conditioned, and there's normally some servers whirring away in the background. But no, I've always been keen to plonk my backside in the middle of a sales floor and not only operate at management level and board level and understand what they're focusing on to try drive the business, but also understand what the floor's doing and what the workers are doing, because quite often there's a disparity between the two. And I think if you can communicate with both levels of the business, that will then bring success, because you can almost be a representative for the floor, and you can also be a representative for the management team as well. And that in turn breeds success, because quite often the floor isn't talking to the management, and quite often the management isn't talking to the floor.
Yeah.
And it's not just on technology, it's about process. And, quite often you go into a business and you sit with them for 10, 15 minutes and you go, well, just show me what you do. Show me how you book that interview or you format that CV. And then I just go, well, why have you done it that way? Well, that's how I was shown. How long have you been here? 7 years.
Yeah.
Right. I can save you 5 minutes per CV. How many CVs are you doing today? Well, I'm doing 50 today.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We're going to save you a
and
lot of
that's
time
where the
here.
saving and the benefits and the successes start to come from.
Yeah. And quite often the middle management are so busy running their business, and the upper management are so busy running their business, they're not aware of what's going on down here. And there's no disrespect to them, it happens both ways. The floor need to make someone aware that, and they might have had experience in the past whereby, well, we've spoken to the IT guy, but he doesn't really understand recruitment, he doesn't really understand what we do. He knows how to administer the systems, but doesn't really know how to translate IT into recruitment speak, so we don't typically speak to him. And that's where I try to come in. My USP is you can talk to me on recruitment terms, and I can understand it, and I can convert that into a system process, or I can recommend you a product, or we can build on what you've got to make it much more efficient and much more streamlined.
Because a lot of the time, again, coming back to this idea of trying to grow at pace and do things, a lot of things get left behind, and those processes, there was nothing wrong with your example of, this is how we book an interview, but it's not the best way of doing it. But actually, that's not the focus. The focus that from the management is to try and hire more people, get more jobs on, place more people, and actually something as small as that tends to get left behind, because if it's not broken, or if it's not making a noise, it's like, well, that works. But someone coming from the outside and going, show me how this all works, brings all of that out to the 4 or 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here. Suddenly you've saved them hours.
Sometimes it's not necessarily turning a negative into a positive. Sometimes it's all about sharing more positives across the business. You might find that one department are doing things in a certain way that's different from another department, and then bringing that consistency together then makes your reporting better, then makes your ability to grow the business in a more efficient way, in a more consistent way, just by bringing those familiarities and those similarities closer together.
You mentioned cybersecurity earlier with an emphasis. Security seems to be something that always comes after an event, in the same way by a lot of people install burglar alarms in their homes after they've been burgled. That's, I think it's just kind of human nature. But how, kind of leading question here, because you're not going to say it doesn't matter, but how important actually is the security specifically of a recruitment agency?
Doesn't matter.
Forget about it.
I think it has to be paramount. I think you should always have an eye on security.
I suppose, where does it actually fit in? Because it is important, isn't it? It's a stupid question, really, but where do you prioritize that in a world, like you said, you set up your business, and suddenly you've got to do this, and you've got to do this, and you've got to. Where does it where's the priority of that?
I think you've got running your business and making money, and then I think security has to come at least second or third in that list. And for one-man recruitment bans, there's going to be less emphasis there because they know what they're doing, they trust themselves and all that kind of thing. It's then when you start adding heads is when security really starts making sense. And things like something as simple as implementing a password management tool. I've working with a guy in the last few weeks who pretty much used the same password for everything that he was logged into, and he had one of his accounts got compromised, and then all of a sudden all of his accounts got compromised. Now he's a one-man band business. Up until that point, there was no concerns. It was just most convenient. In most cases, he didn't have any type of sort of multi-factor authentication because it was just a pain.
And don't use your daughter's name and birth year as your password.
I would probably avoid that as well. Yeah, and his whole world, and I don't want to be dramatic here, but his whole world imploded. Suddenly he's backtracking, having to undo things. Even something as simple as a social media account, which to most people, ownership of your Instagram account might not be a major thing, but when this bad actor is then starts posting on your behalf and starts sending out messages to people that you might not necessarily want them to share, that's when actually, Rich, that password manager you mentioned to me a few years ago, can we get that set up now? Can we build that? How do we go about this? And it's all about, so we then took a full assessment of his systems, his phone, his laptop, anything else that was connected, any sort of devices that were connected into his business. And I'm pleased to say we managed to recover almost everything back to where it was previously. But as you say, a lot of people don't do anything until something happens, and because there's normally a cost associated with it, it's like insurance, isn't it? A lot of people only get car insurance because it's a legal, a legal requirement. But I wonder how many people, if it wasn't a legal requirement, I wonder how many people would just fall by the wayside, not bother. Yeah.
So second or third, password management. Where else does it start to become, as we're thinking about adding on heads? I mean, a lot of the people that watch this podcast will be aspiring recruitment business owners that are starting to grow or want to grow. So as you said, it's kind of fine if it's like just you. If you haven't got a password manager, then start to add that. What other things start to creep into that IT requirement, IT security heading, as you go from maybe hiring 2, 3, 4, 5 heads? What other things start to come into consideration there?
I mean, the recruitment industry is governed by the ICO, and data and management of that data is really important. And our business in recruitment is all dealing with PII and that personal information piece. So you have to make sure that you're protecting that as much as possible. So if you've got the ability to switch on a multi-factor authentication within your CRM system, do it.
Yeah,
absolutely do it. Because if you do end up in a situation whereby you experience a breach, the ICO come knocking and they say, well, why didn't you enable that? You're going to have a pretty good answer before you then start incurring fines. But I also think it's really important, we're a remote working world now, and gone are the days of you sat round a desk and you're in your war room and you've got your general in the middle and your troops around the outside. So you don't necessarily have that ability to keep an eye on everyone and everything that's going on in your business anymore. And that's great. I think it's really good that we're trusted as employees to have these freedoms. But let's make sure the systems are in place to do that. Out of the box, a lot of the platforms that you can buy nowadays, like the Microsoft 365s of this world, out of the box come with defenders and threat protections and things like this. And yes, you pay a monthly fee for that, but it's also peace of mind, and it's making sure that you're ticking those boxes and you are operating as secure as you can.
What with, thinking about the remote side of things, you mentioned it's great for the employees to be able to have that level of freedom. But from an IT perspective, are you just thinking there's a threat everywhere because someone's picking up their laptop and walking out and, working on the train, and, you hear these stories of people leaving laptops on trains and, all that type of stuff? There must be an enhanced, and again, you're not in an office with everything being connected to a server and everything uploaded in the server. Everything is now kind of remote, and presumably there's some potentially candidate information on that laptop, so there's threats there, right? There's what's the word? Not threats. There's threats. There's potential issues throughout all of that. How would someone manage that?
As you say, because we're not connected to servers in the traditional sense, that's then opened up remote management and mobile device management systems. And quite often, as part of these monthly subscriptions that we pay to Microsoft and Google and things like that, we can have our management systems, which used to be reserved for big enterprise businesses, are now available to these smaller businesses for just a couple of extra quid per month. And if you've got all of your different systems connected to that one management system, then that minimize your risk even further, because that if a person within a business loses their laptop, someone else in that organization can just quickly change the password on it, or change the PIN, or disable that account centrally, and all of that cascades through to the multiple accounts that you've got attached to that central location. Your laptops are generally encrypted, so unless you've got that password, you generally, unless someone really wants that candidate's CV,
Yeah.
the chance of getting them into there are relatively small, but it's also about the speed at which you notify those people within your business, or having someone, perhaps an external MSP type business, or an external consultant that can quickly operate and manage that process.
And this is
for
where
you.
your business kind of comes into it, because I'm sitting here thinking, if I was running a business, I'm running a small 5-person business, I probably haven't thought about any of this stuff, because I'm
Why
just
would you?
thinking
Your
about
focus is getting your business off the ground. Even when I got my business off the ground, my focus was, right, I haven't got a job anymore. I've got to make a job out of this. So yes, I think it's human nature. Your focus it always has to be on the business, and it's very difficult to almost steer your eye away from that. But try.
Have you got any kind of practical things that, we mentioned about password manager, but again, if they don't have you, if someone's phoning you up and they've gone, Rich, I need you to help me, and you go, I can't, I'm too busy, and I'll come back to you in a month's time. Like, what are the what's the things that they should be thinking about doing? Talk about password manager, but I'm sitting here almost terrified of those threats now that we've just talked about. Two-factor authentication, 2FA. I think it's much easier to say, isn't it? Especially if you
or MFA now. Some
MFA,
systems require
MFA.
multi-factor authentication.
That is a big tick box, right? That locks a lot of things down. It's annoying because you have to have your phone and whatever it is. But would you say that's quite high priority in terms of that will be a good thing as the first thing to have on whatever you've got?
Absolutely. I mean, the more blockers that you can put in for a malicious actor, the better.
Is that what you call them, malicious actors?
Yes.
That's
That's
a hacker.
That's modern talk for hacker.
Yeah. Okay.
Hackers. I think the term hackers reserved for films now.
Yeah.
Because I always thought as hacking as someone gaining access to something via a back door, or something's been left open or whatever. Whereas malicious actor can cover all sorts of different things. They might already be in your system, but as I said earlier, we had someone already in your system, but was posting things to social media that person.
Yeah.
That's
so pretending to be like.
Yeah.
Pretending to be you.
Because that's malicious acting.
Right.
So
okay.
I guess it's a bit more all encompassing.
Yeah.
Than just gaining access to something. But yeah, sorry. Good password lengths, complex passwords, as complex as you can be without really hindering your day-to-day. A lot of businesses favour have a good password primarily, and then favour a PIN system.
Yeah.
And then almost cover that off with multi-factor authentication. A lot of these businesses now, and a lot of these software companies allow for things like geofencing. So if you're a business that only operates in the UK, why do you need to allow access to those systems for other countries?
Yeah.
You might be a regular visitor to Spain. Brilliant on your holidays.
Yeah.
Just have UK and Spain available to you.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You want to sort of narrow these things down as much as possible and minimise that risk as much as possible. The good thing with geofencing, and I use the word good quite loosely, is if someone is able to guess your password to hack your MFA system, with geofencing enabled, they still can't gain access to your system because their IP, their location, everything like that is blocked.
Yeah.
So it's just another wall. It's just another line of defence.
Yeah.
It's a brick piece. It's how big is your wall?
Because sometimes you get you log into something, and if it's not on the same computer or whatever it is, you'll then get this doesn't look like it's you. You haven't logged in on this before, and then you end up getting an email to say, was that you?
Get your one-time code. Yeah.
So I think that's quite good. But this is a lot of systems are now doing that automatically. Is there a temptation for a person to just rely on someone else? Doing, if you try and log into a system, and then it says, don't recognise you, we're going to send you a message. You can go, oh, well, that's all right, because they're taking the responsibility rather than you then worrying about it. Do you think there could be someone just thinking they're not your problem to have that password because, Microsoft will do it for me because they'll recognize if someone logs in?
I think complacency forms
Complacency,
a part,
that's the word I was looking for. I couldn't think of it. So.
Yeah, I think complacency forms a lot of part of security, and I would say, to a certain extent, I would say complacency forms a part of a lot of security breaches as well, because unless it's a 0-day exploit, in which case, someone's identified a hole within your security system and they're going in before it's fixed, what's your excuse? That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
No, I'm going to have to come back to what is 0-day exploit? I mean, that sounds like a movie. I talk about movies.
I mean, I think the term is designed to be as dramatic as possible, but yeah, a 0-day, and actually you've got 0-hour exploits now. It's the time between a hole in your security system or a hole in your platform is identified to the time at which it's then remedied and then fixed. And the exploit bit is the part that's been someone's found out about it and then starting using that to gain access to your systems.
Yeah. So they realise there's a hole that you've left the window open, and they start piling it in and taking all your stuff out. And how long you leave that window open.
And
for.
That's why systems are constantly updating. You get patches on your laptop, you get patches on your phone, you get patches on your CCTV systems and your central heating systems and all of that now.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately there are people out there that are paid just to find holes in your doors.
Yeah.
And they're also paid to exploit those and gain something from it, whether it be information, money, product.
What are the actual odds on this? Talking about car insurance, and I can't remember the last time I made a claim for my car insurance, and if the minute you don't have it will be the minute that someone drives into you, and without trying to find a balance, because I think it's quite worrying, quite concerning that a lot of people could gain access to your system, a malicious actor. Yeah, what are the odds on this? Because on one hand, you got to have everything Fort Knox locked down. Thinking of the number of recruitment companies in the UK, which people always, bandy around, the odds, you've got to be pretty unlucky for someone to come and find your window that's been left open. Have you? Or are people just constantly going around knocking on, trying the car doors and windows and stuff?
It's more of the latter. I think people are constantly trying to knock on doors. My systems alone, I'm a one-person business, and you can see that there are regular taps on the doors of just my accounts. Yeah. And I work purely in Microsoft 365. I've got lots of security bolted on, but I can see when someone has tried to make an attempt into my system. Yeah. Obviously they failed, but we've got my 365 platform, for example, has got logging switched on, so I can see anyone that's tried to. They've not been successful, thankfully. Yeah. But you can see that there's constant, and there's just nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
Because you could put up another blocker, or you could put up another thing in the way, but they'll just keep tapping on that door.
Yes.
I think we've used the word complacency before, but I would always have it in your mind. Always consider if you've got an opportunity to use single sign-on, if you've got an opportunity to join your systems together, so it all comes under one secure umbrella, then definitely utilise that.
To do what we get sometimes is people will email other Wave employees and make it look as though it's from me, and give it the whole, can you call me now, or can you buy these gift cards, or can you send me some money, or
you can
whatever it is.
You can guarantee it. Certainly new employees, you can guarantee it within a few days of them updating their LinkedIn status to work into for their new company, that the CEO will ask them to go and deal with something very important that must be done this morning. And invariably it involves a WhatsApp chat and then a a trip to the shops to go and buy some vouchers for an event we're holding this afternoon.
Yes, yeah.
Don't worry, we'll pay your expenses.
Yeah, and so some of them are, again, where it's easy to, you just look at the email address and you can see that it's not. And we sort of talk a lot about, like, I don't ask people to do that sort of stuff, but if people are on the go, people are busy, people are checking emails on their phone or whatever it is, that complacency, it's maybe not complacency, but it is something whereby you're constantly busy. And so maybe your guards drop if you are, on the go or whatever, and your guard can drop and bang, before you know it, you've kind of bought 10 grand's worth of Amazon gift vouchers for someone that, someone else.
I think it's easy to do. And like I say, you just joined a new business. The CEO, very important person, has just emailed you asking you to do something. You don't want to say no. You don't want to go back to them and go, hang on a minute, are you really who you say you are?
Yeah.
Because that could potentially compromise
your job.
Yeah. But I think always err on the side of caution. I've always told the people that I've worked with, if it doesn't feel right, then generally it's not. I've always operated, when I was IT director, I always operated, a bit of an open door policy. If you're not sure, just send it to me and then I can give you an answer. In fact, I do that with my clients now. We don't necessarily have a support contract in place. It's purely project work, but quite often I'll get an email from someone going, does this look right to you? And most of the time it's not. Most of the time it includes something that just doesn't seem right.
You already know, you already have that gut feeling, or like if they've sent it to you, they already have that feeling like, oh no, this is right. It's already there.
And I think it's always good to check. It's always good, or ignore it. And then if that person then calls you or messages you, or call them or message them, Paul, I've just had an email from you. You've asked me to go and do something. Is this right? It's not normally what my job would be, or no, I'm not in the finance department, so why have I got to suddenly change the bank account on this client?
Yes, yeah.
It doesn't hurt to check.
And we've probably stumbled across something else here then, in terms of training for new people joining the business. Again, we sort of creating this sort of fictitious company that's growing and hiring people. As part of the how to use the system, security training within this could easily form part of that, to say, look, I'll never send you a message to say, can you go and buy these vouchers? That's never what I'm going to do. So training becomes another way of just staying away from that complacency piece for new people that come in that don't want to upset their CEO.
Make it part of your onboarding. Cyber awareness training, I think, is critical. Making sure that they understand what the risks are, how those risks can be presented to you, and what you do at the point at which a risk is identified. And that could be in the form of emails, as we've discussed, or you've noticed something not quite right within the system. Suddenly a load of files have been deleted. What's going on there? Rather than just leaving it, let's establish some sort of routine or some sort of policy around how you notify someone within the business that's taking place. And don't just do it for new employees. Make it a continual thing. Make it a regular thing, so it's fresh in their mind. And
because it can be easily forgotten. Forgotten about.
Yeah.
It's funny. We kind of gone down this route of like security, and I don't want to turn the whole this whole podcast into like a security thing, because I know we want to talk about a little bit about systems and making sure that they're working well. But just popped into my head, having said that, where are we at in the world with viruses now? Is that still should we still be worried about opening that attachment that like suddenly is then going to take over our machine? Is that still a problem?
I mean, without getting too technical, a virus is a piece of software that has and software is built with code. So generally a virus scanner will go, that code looks the same as that virus, so we'll block it. And that the speed at which these protection security companies operate now, it's almost secondary to stopping these malicious actors, because patching and building systems and adding those bricks to your wall that then stop those malicious actors and those people that are knocking on your door coming in. Virus is almost secondary now, because it's It's almost older technology.
Yeah. Old fashioned. Good old fashioned virus.
Yeah. Well, they call it's called endpoint protection now, as opposed to
protection.
virus protection or virus scanners.
I love all the updated terminology. I really should get up to speed with all of this stuff. Okay, so let's kind of just leave security for a minute until we come back to it possibly. But, I want to go back to the example before where you were talking about sitting down with people. Let's talk about something a bit more not exciting, but a bit more beneficial to a company. Where are you at with like the type of systems that recruitment agencies should have and shouldn't have? We talked before we started about lots of recruitment tech. Is there like your basic tool? What's in your basic toolkit of tech that you should have? CRM?
Definitely, yeah, have a good CRM system. But I always try and promote a business first approach whenever I'm working with a company. Don't just buy something because it looks flashy. Make sure that it is going to work for you, and not just today, but tomorrow. If you're looking at a system that doesn't support multi-currency, for example, or isn't suitable for temp placements, high turnover temp placements, don't just buy it because it's flashy and it's good today. Make sure you've got, you're asking the vendors, how does it do this? Show me. Make sure it accommodates for those things and your future growth plans. You might be 2, 3, 4 years off breaking into a new market that requires your multi-currency. But if your contract with this vendor provider is 2, 3, 4 years long, make sure it accommodates, because something could change tomorrow and suddenly you're dropped into that market and suddenly you've got to do that. I always thought I would only ever operate in the UK, and I found myself in the last week with a Dutch client and a German client. So I've quickly had to, start making some, accommodation for how my finance systems and how my invoices system works. But I always knew it was capable of doing that before I invested. Yes. So always make sure that you've got a good CRM system in place that can accommodate for what the type of business that you're trying to operate in.
How long do you think, and just, again, jumping into the mindset of a business owner, like typically they will buy the CRM that works for them today,
or probably what they've used previously in their previous employer, because it's familiar and it's one less thing to be concerned about, because that familiarity piece is a bit of a comfort blanket when there's so many things out there. That said, some of these systems can be heavily customized, so what you buy from day one isn't necessarily what you've been used to historically. It might still have the same badge at the top, but like for my business, the business I was working with at Henderson Scott, we spent a lot of time customizing, streamlining, changing things in order to make the process as efficient as possible. When you buy these things from day one, typically they're each to all men and all types of recruitment businesses. I spent a lot of time turning stuff off and then repurposing that for another day. So maybe as part of your onboarding process, make sure you can try and accommodate for as much of that as possible.
And I guess, the business first thing is really useful. So you come back to kind of what you want it to do. And because your business that you are now running maybe is quite different to the much bigger business that you left to start up this company. So I guess what you're saying is start with what do you want your business to do? What do you need it to do?
What are you expecting your business to be?
Yeah, and thinking about the future.
And always have one eye on the future.
Because maybe a lot of the time we only see the next 6 months or 12 months into the future, whereas you speak to some people in their CRM, they've had it for like 10 years, and either they're happy with it or they're now completely entrenched with it, and the idea of changing it is really appealing, but it's a nightmare to change all of that.
Or unfortunately, on the flip side, they've invested in this thing and they've not done anything with it, and more often than not, the troops have stopped using it, and suddenly you're shortlisting a candidate, sending his CV, interviewing and placing all in the same day. And we, despite the best will in the world, that doesn't really happen. But quite often it becomes secondary because it's not been invested in the right way, not just from a financial point of view, but from a how we're going to grow this and progress it and streamline.
So CRM, that's really important. What other pieces of tech would you say that a business needs to really get the most out of, or would put quite high up on there?
So not a specific piece of technology, but email delivery is really important. So we saw earlier this year, back in February, we saw Google and Yahoo, amongst a few other smaller names, change their policies and systems around email delivery. And what that was really aimed at was reducing spam that was being delivered to business and consumer mailboxes. And what that means is at the moment, and we spoke about this in the security pieces, I could send an email from Dave, and it would look like it comes from Dave because Dave's not got anything on his email to authenticate that it's come from the right location.
Yeah.
And basically the legislation or the implementation that Google and Yahoo brought in was basically, well, we're not going to accept any emails that haven't been pre-authenticated first.
Right.
That's it. So if you don't have some of these policies in place, and what I'm referring to, you might have heard the term, you've got DMARC and DKIM,
yeah,
and then there's another part of it that forms part of it is your SPF records, and they're all connected to your domain. And a lot of businesses, established businesses, didn't have any of this in place, and they operated almost perfectly fine, almost in bliss, up until February of this year, and found that they can't get emails through to Google customers or Gmail customers or Google Workspace customers,
yeah,
and same for Yahoo as well. So now suddenly email delivery's dropped off, and now they're having to backpedal and deal with that. Unfortunately, what then happens is if you get massive amounts of undelivered email, your domain or your business, your electronic business reputation then starts to deplete. So then you have to then grow that back.
It's a bit of a vicious cycle then.
Yeah, but nobody tells you this. Nobody tells you that you should have some of these policies in place. Yeah. Someone will always try and sell you a product that will do this for you, but always, without necessarily, you don't necessarily have to buy a piece of tech, but at least make sure you've got your DMARC, your DKIM, and your SPF records in place to ensure that email deliverability, because it's bread and butter to your industry, isn't it? So,
how on earth do you go about doing that? Is that something that you do with your domain provider or your?
If you've got an
don't give away any secrets.
No, we'll bleep it out. But if you've got an IT function within your business, then ultimately they really should have done it for you.
Yeah.
If they don't understand it, then there are people out there that can help.
Yeah.
I've helped quite a few businesses over the last few months, and more often than not, I just do an email delivery check. We identify where the issues are. I have a look at your domain. We make the fixes, and then off you go.
Yeah.
And that normally sorts it out from that point. And then we'll check in every now and then and just make sure things are going as they should.
Yeah.
But it's all about legitimizing your business. It's all about legitimizing your email and your web domain and making sure that the messages that have been perceived to have come from you are genuinely from you, which I think is a good thing. Just make sure it's in place, because that will help with your business.
Because the amount of sort of what seem like automation style emails, and you look at them and you go, this doesn't even feel like it's come from a person. Is that?
That's formed part of why they brought in their changes, because it was so easy prior to the changes coming in earlier this year. It was so easy to manipulate an automated email to look like it had come from someone else.
Yeah.
En masse as well. 5,000, 10,000 messages a day. It was so easy to do that without, with any concern that they were going to get blocked. Now, because people are more aware, hopefully more aware, these policies will then start reducing the reliance on spam email or spoofed emails as a way into manipulating.
The less you have, the more, if it's genuine, then it's more reliable, right? And then actually you're probably more likely to get a response. But if it's not, then
Absolutely. I mean, we're coming back to the security piece, but email delivery is important to our business, our industry, isn't it? We need to make sure. Quite often, it's fastest finger first. If your email is more likely to deliver to a candidate or a potential client than your competitor, then why would you not?
Well, this is business critical, isn't it?
Yeah,
because you've got fees that are following those emails, and when they land, is the difference between charging a fee and not. So,
and it comes back to what I've always tried to promote is bringing the IT function and the sales and the business function closer together. Some might consider your DMARC and your DKIM policies purely an IT decision to implement those. Actually, no, it's a business decision.
Yeah,
it's a business decision because it's going to directly impact your bottom line if you do not have some of these policies and procedures in place.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to get consultants interested, isn't it? Because if they're like, well, I sent that CV at 11 o'clock and my competitor sent it at 11:05, so my CV landed first. But then if you turn around and say, yeah, but that didn't actually get received until 12 o'clock, so sorry, you lost out.
Because it ended up in a spam box.
Suddenly it becomes very interesting.
And clients are more aware of things like this now. As on the flip side, on the receiver side, people are more likely to invest in email gateway tools, email security gateway tools, which will automatically block something that doesn't conform. So you haven't got hope in hell in lots of cases unless you've got these policies in place to get that email delivery through.
We're, I'm sure we're running out of time. And I want to kind of like try and summarize some of this stuff, because in some instances it feels like it's turned into a bit of a kind of IT surgery for a lot of things. So I do want to summarize it. Before I do that, just want to try and get a quick soundbite on AI and where that's going. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's got an opinion on it. I'm sure you have as well. How is that impacting? How do you think that's going to impact the recruitment industry? That's a really broad question, but what's your current view?
I've been asked this a few times now, and for me, if you're and I don't want to scare anyone, but I think if you're a very,
I think we've scared people enough. So we're going to put a rating on this one.
I think from a recruitment perspective, I think you're a very transactional recruiter, and you focus purely on emails and text messages, and you're not necessarily a consulting recruiter, let's say. You're not necessarily someone to pick up the phone. I think you'll find that AI will start to do a lot of the things that you do if you're recruiting very regularly for the same jobs in the same places, and you don't put yourself out there and become more of a on the phone recruiter, then I think you'll find that AI will take a lot of what you do away from you.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, it can do it quicker. It can probably do it better, and it can do it 24/7, and it doesn't have sick days or holidays or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I think if you are a business that operates a genuine consultancy, whereby you have proper client interaction, proper candidate interaction, then I think you've got less to worry about. But definitely embrace what's available to you. Definitely embrace what's coming around the corner, because there's all these things that we do within our industry that everybody hates. And I always come back to things like CV formatting and job advert writing and things like that. And nobody really likes to do those things. And if you do, great, carry on. But if you could have a tool that could save you 10, 15 minutes a CV, and you can get your product out the door looking consistent, consistent across the business, it looks beautiful, it's presented well, it's even generated your accompanying email to go with it, which then complements the CV, which then complements the AI generated profile that comes with it, then the product that goes out the door is of much higher quality than what you were previously. And that quality is consistent throughout the week. The quality is still the same at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when you're trying to rush out the door for the weekend as it was at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning when you first started your week. That sort of thing can only benefit you. Just embrace it.
So use the strengths, use its strengths,
Yeah.
but use and actually combine that with your own strengths as an individual as well.
Yeah. I was I hosted an event last week. I did a LinkedIn post about it, and one of our panelists spoke about AI as being a superhero, become a superhero off the back of the tools that you've got. Whereas I flipped it slightly and I said, well, why don't you assemble your superheroes and have all your different AI products in line? And we use the Avengers as an example because each of the Avengers have their own different skills.
Yeah.
And independently, they're pretty good, but bring them all together and they save the world.
Yeah. Numerous times.
And I did a LinkedIn post on it. Go and find it. And my AI generated image included Batman in my Avengers post.
Interesting. Yeah.
And what was really good was because we came away from our event going, definitely embrace AI, exactly what I've just said, but don't shy away from the human element.
Yeah.
Maintain that human element as well. And my AI image, I thought, was the epitome of that because it produced this fantastic image, but Batman was with the Avengers.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not right.
Yeah.
But, we can't have that.
Yeah.
So always keep an eye on it to make sure that it's doing what you need it to do. Make sure that it's delivering the products that you want it to deliver, and make sure it's servicing the part of your business that you need it to service in the way that's familiar and correct.
Yeah.
Because you don't want Batman in the Avengers,
do you? No. It'd be quite interesting though, but no, I don't think you do. Brilliant. I think I'm just trying to kind of summarize some of the key points in this, and I'm struggling to pull them all out.
We've covered a bit, haven't we?
We've covered so much in it, but I'm thinking, password managers, make sure they're in two-factor authentication, 2FA or MFA,
yeah.
Malicious actors, watch out for those guys. Email deliverability, training for your team. There's a lot there. So. And AI, don't put Batman in the Avengers, please. Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing all of that stuff. Really, really useful. I think there's so much good value in there, and people come and find you. We'll obviously link it all up. So if anyone wants to talk to you, they come find you on LinkedIn or visit your website or however else.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Super dupe. Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.